Welcome to episode 27 of Thrashcast. I'm your host, Billy, today, and I'm here with my usual partners here, Jim and Ken. How are you guys doing this evening?
We're doing very good, sir.
Awesome. It's great day to talk metal, but so is every day.
There you go.
Yep.
You're not going to get any argument from us on that one.
No.
But yeah, so just a quick where you can find Thrashcast, our website www.horrormetalsounds.com, and our YouTube channel Horror Metal Sounds at keng.2864. And I'm hoping I'm not going to be losing my voice. I was at the KK's pre-show last night, and so the voice is a little raw a bit, but yeah. And then just a quick request for folks, if you can please like and subscribe the YouTube channel and our various podcasts. It's much appreciated. It'll help our channel grow, and of course, it's very easy and free to do for you. In terms of our agenda for today, so we're going back to Germany. We spent a few weeks over there, but no longer with the Big Four. Today's band is Deathrow. And so we're going to tackle a very interesting album. Maybe has something in common even with the Black Album we talked about last week, like in terms of a very drastic change in musical direction. The album comes from 1989. We'll chat about a couple questions we've laid out. And then lastly, we're going to cover each of us our top 10 technical thrash albums. So staying on that technical vein. So then let's, before we jump into Deathrow, let's start with our usual news and what's spinning segment. Jim, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Just a couple of brief things. First, I don't know if you guys heard this or not, but Iron Maiden's in November are going to be re-releasing an album for a version of Power Slave for the 40th anniversary. So it's kind of really cool because apparently this one's going to have the picture disc in the middle of it that kind of moves with when it spins.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool. You can see it online. The only disappointing thing is they're using the 2015 remix, the 2015 remastered edition. And from what I understand, that was remastered like using rather than using the original tapes and that, it was more along the lines of using an online kind of for the streaming services. So it's a little weaker than I'm hearing a lot of fans claim it's a little bit weaker and it's not as good as the original recordings. So it kind of strikes me as a little bit like I'm excited to see this because this album means so much to me. It was the first tour I saw when I was 13 back in '84. Yeah. Them with Twisted Sister, but it seems a little lazy to kind of just throw this together and not do a proper, if you're gonna let's get a really sharp remaster or maybe even a remix to some degree. I mean, I don't necessarily think the album needed that from the original pressings, but if you're gonna do it, let's just do it and let's do it right. So I mean, what do you guys think? It's kind of lazy on my. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm not a big. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Go ahead, Ken.
No, I was just gonna say it sounds lazy. I could see that, but maybe they didn't want to spend any money.
Yeah.
To do another remaster. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that version of the album. Even a lot of the more recent Maiden ones are not nearly as good as the old days. So I don't know, maybe two things. So either what Ken said, they don't want to spend the money, which is a shame because nobody has more money than Maiden in the metal game. Or maybe Metallica, but yeah, so that makes no sense. Or two, like a number of archives of master tapes have been lost in fires at various studios, right? So maybe there are no more master tapes, or it could be that they went back to the master so many times. It's just not good quality anymore, right? Every time they go to the master and redo it again, it sort of weakens the tape every single time in the quality. So yeah, I don't know. But yeah, so I agree, Jim. That looked very cool. They also announced in that same one the Somewhere in Time too, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So I mean, but it's just like, come on, guys. Like it seems like we're just kind of got like it just got released. It seems a little rushed. Maybe that's why they just don't have time to do a proper remaster and go back for it. It's just I would have rather them use maybe like, but I understand what Billy's saying. I would have rather them skip that to the 2015 one and just go right back if they wanted to. I mean, I just think, I mean, they're touring. They're touring. They're in Australia right now, or just finished in Australia. So I mean, it's a perfect time. That's probably why they're hitting the market with this, because it's perfect timing. And just another quick thing that I was able to live stream the obituary shows over the weekend.
Awesome.
And man, they were phenomenal. Ken, I'll be writing a review for our, for us there. So that's going to be really cool. I mean, for a fan of Obituary, my favorite death metal band of all time. And I would love to go see them, especially on this tour with Sepultura and Agnostic Front. I mean, that would be really cool. And I know, like, I posted on my own Facebook, I think it was 2015 Wacken, they had I think they had something from World Demise on there, which was wicked. I believe it was 2015. I'm sure, Billy, you were probably present for that. But it was just so cool. And the live streams were really good. The first one was the set list for the upcoming show. So it was about 45 minutes to an hour with some like little stories and stuff they told, which was really cool. And they did a few extra tracks with that. But the really cool thing was Sunday night, they did the whole World Demise album from start to finish, which was really, really neat. And it was funny because they did such a tight job. I'm hoping, like me and Billy and Ken, we've talked about this. So I'm hoping that maybe there's a recording of this because it would be really, really cool. But they they had to it was really neat watching them because they were in their studio there. And like Tardy's just reading the lyrics because he said, it's been so long since I played a lot of these songs, and some of them they haven't played in such a long time, but they had to, they had to learn them, get used to them, and then rip through them. So they're hoping that maybe, as I think they're going to be in Wacken this year, Billy, are they? They're set to play?
I think so, yeah. I think you might be right. I'm seeing them at a lot of festivals. Yeah.
And they're hoping to add a lot of these tracks, some of these tracks to them, because man, did they ever sound so good. And John, he hasn't lost his voice at all. He's got that
he's great
sound to it. It's just so exciting to hear. I mean, I was just like, and I get to stream it now from now until the end of October, so I'm gonna keep watching it, and that it's just so cool. And what I liked about it is, and I watched the Annihilator one there in June. They kept it nice, and they didn't keep it. I'm glad they broke it up in 2 nights, and it made it a lot more enjoyable to watch. It was definitely worth it. Like, I think it cost me $86 Canadian, and I got a shirt with it as well. So pretty much 2 nights of and then that, and it was really, really neat. They were chatting with people on there and thanking it was just really cool. And to see them just fly through the songs. I mean, and they were beat. They were saying, man, doing that album, we don't realize how strenuous it is to do that album in its entirety, because it's just it's such a groundbreaking album, and has a really technical songs on it for death metal. So, and to break into what I'm spinning, I've got the staying on that line. I actually, I'm starting to fill in some of my missing Obituary catalog. So I picked this up this week.
Oh, great album.
Inked in Blood.
Yeah, great album.
A great album, and I got a really good price on a copy, so I pulled the trigger on that. And I was able to get in my copy of Witch Vomit, which I haven't even opened yet. This is a fantastic band, and I got to be honest, they've broken into my top 30. Because I'm going to do a top 30 list. I think we're all going to do a top list on one of our episodes. But these guys broke into my top 30. They broke into my top 20. I think they're going to break into my top 10. And maybe, I got to be honest with you, 200 Stab Wounds is going to be 1 to 3. But this could be right behind them. It's that close. But I mean, I really love 200 Stab Wounds, but this is one hell of a great album. And I suggest anybody who's looking for some great death metal, Funeral Sanctum, pick it up. Not a bad track on the album, and it's phenomenal. So that's what I got this week, guys.
Cool.
Over to me?
Sure.
All right, cool. Yeah, so three pieces. So the first one, I don't know if you guys saw this, but I'm really excited. So Sodom announced they're reissuing Tapping the Vein.
Yes.
So great album, but some of those packages look really good. Like
Ah,
CD, like I had my eye on a vinyl. It's three or four vinyl. Like it's two live concerts. It's a remastered version of the original, and then there's something that's like a redux version. I think they might be them re-recording it presently,
oh, wicked.
and so that brings with it should they or shouldn't they? But I mean that's neither here nor it's part of a package, so that's probably a more acceptable way to do it. So, and they have different versions, or you could just get the remastered version of the album. So that looks really cool. And those old Sodom albums are tend to be difficult to find. So particularly on vinyl. So that's those are a win for me. We were chatting a bit about this, guys. I flipped you the ad, but Death Angel are doing their
Yeah.
annual event, their Christmas shows. So that's like December 13th and 14th in San Fran. They do a good job for charity. They always bring on some opening bands. So they have Necrotic on one night and Violence on another. So it's pretty good lineup. So yeah, I guess we've had some debate about what's going on with Mark and Slayer. I guess they've decided to do these holiday shows. So and it's for a good cause. So I don't know
Mhm.
that could end up being the last the last live event. But I think I'm going to try to get out there during that time of year. I think it'd be cool to sort of experience that. So we'll see how that goes. That's in a few months. And then the last thing I had was Texas Hell's Heroes actually announced their full lineup
Mm.
last week, and it's some killer stuff, right? So the two main headliners are going to be Saxon and not my favorite, but Abath, I guess for death metal fans, but lots of other cool bands like DRI, Sadist, Exciter from over here.
Warlord.
Canada, Hyrax will be there. Raven, Gamacide is going to be there. The old thrash band, Nasty Savage there as well. So check that out. You can see all the bands that are going to be there. And remember, they already had a pre-announcement with like Coroner and Cavalera Brothers and Crimson
Mhm.
Spree. So yeah, they're looking forward to that. That's March 20th of 2025. So that's a cool growing festival in the US. I highly recommend. And then quickly in terms of what's spitting, I was able to do. So I was in Montreal last week, able to do some cool record shopping. Got a lot of cool things, but found this something I always
Yeah.
wanted
Cool.
on vinyl. So that's early like Quebec, Montreal
Yep.
thrash, right? So this is Aggression, the full treatment 1987. So really cheap too, like a new vinyl. Like it's like a reissue, but it was only like $27, which is kind of unheard of for vinyl these days. But yeah, anyone in Montreal, you just head out to like the Mount Royal area, and there's like three or four amazing record shops that just what most record stores have in rock section, that's what they have in metal section. It's just bin after bin after bin after bin in Montreal. So that's pretty cool. So that's what I had. And sorry, Ken, I just realized actually you should have been up next. I'm the host. I should have went
That's
last.
okay. No
So
worries.
I was sitting there waiting for you to go, and then so yeah,
Oh,
you jump
no
in now.
problem.
Hey,
No problem.
Bill. Hey,
Yeah,
Billy, just one quick thing. And Warlord's going to be at Hell's
yeah, they
Heroes.
are. Yeah.
And that's, I think, is that their first time playing North America?
Could be.
Oh, man. Like Giles Lavery, they just had a new album of re-records that Giles has done there that just got released, I think, about a month ago. And their new album definitely is going
Yeah.
to be in my, probably even in my top 10. I listen to that almost daily.
I
Such
know
a
you
great
like that
album.
album, Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Love
no,
it.
I should have mentioned that. I knew you'd like that. But yeah, this festival, the guy who runs it's really good at bringing over new bands. Like he
Cool.
really fought hard last time to get Witch Hazel over there.
Oh yeah,
That was their first ever North American show, so that was cool.
wicked.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So the big news that was announced today, I just saw it on Triptychon's Instagram. They just announced that they're doing a show in London, England, and it's taking place on May 3rd of 2025. It's for the I think it's the Incineration Festival. I've never heard of it. I guess maybe it's a new festival in the UK. And apparently, Tom has said that it's going to be an all Celtic Frost tribute show. So they're going to
Oh,
play Frost songs. And he released this statement. So I won't read the statement, but I'll just paraphrase. So what he basically said in the statement that he released was that he always looked up to the UK back in the early days of the band because he always felt that there was a lot of UK journalists that really supported them. So this is kind of like his, I guess, his gift to them for all the years of good writing that they gave Celtic Frost. So it sounds like it's going to be a really good show. I would love to see this show.
yeah.
It sounds like he's really, really excited for this. So I thought that was kind of, yeah.
What's the date, Ken?
It's May 3rd of 2025.
Oh, interesting. Because that's it. They're probably doing a warm-up show because that's one of his shows 2 weeks later at the Maryland Death Fest.
Oh,
Is
nice.
it?
But yeah,
Okay, cool.
they're doing like a full Triptychon set and a full Celtic
Frost.
Frost set.
Yeah,
Wow.
it says it's the Incineration Fest. I've not heard of it, so I don't
You
know if
know
that's like,
me, yeah. I guess
is
it's
it
a warm
new?
up, right? Like
Okay,
I've
right,
heard
right.
of it, but yeah, I guess they do that. Then they head to the U.S. and do the Death Fest, and they're doing 2 nights at the Death Fest.
Yeah, well, Tom said that they are working on the new album now, which is kind of cool because I was always waiting for new music. So they're taking time out from recording this. I'm assuming 2025 they're recording. So according to what the press release was saying, but I'm excited.
You know
I'm
what,
looking
Ken?
forward to it.
That
Yeah,
it's the perfect time for them to release an album. It is like there's such a resurgence of
yeah.
I mean, they would just ride on that Celtic Frost. Like there's such a resurgence right now on all this stuff that I think it'd be perfect. 2025 definitely release an album. That would be so cool.
Well, it's basically his band now
Yeah,
because Martin's passed away. So technically, he can do what he wants. So if he's like at least embracing it again, I think it's great because
same here.
for a while there, he sort of, I know they played some Frost songs on the Triptychon sets, but it's nice that he wants to go back to embrace it.
And just a side note on
Yeah.
the they played Circle of the Tyrants obituary did. It's part of their set list.
Cool.
They
Cool.
do a fantastic job of it. Fantastic.
Cool. That's great. Yeah. That's a great song. It's one of I could see most bands like really wanting to honor that song.
Oh yeah.
It's such a great song.
Yep.
And so I have one spinning item. It's old, it's not new, but I figured since it kind of ties into what we're talking about tonight, I was listening to the first Living Death album, which came out in like 1984. I like this album a lot. It's Vengeance of Hell. It's a pretty good album. Like next to what we're talking about for Deathrow, I consider this the other band that I really like in that kind of, I guess, German thrash genre. Although this album technically isn't really a thrash album, it's more kind of like speed metal, kind of in the vein of like Running Wild, Judas Priest, and some Accept. But they eventually moved to a thrash sound on the next couple albums. But the first album, I still like it. It's raw, lots of energy. It's really cool. And it's funny because we're talking about Deathrow and how they made that drastic change. This band kind of did the same thing because they didn't start out as a thrash band, but by album number 2, they were pretty much a thrash band. So they did the same kind of catapult into something a bit different. So it's kind of a cool album. I thought I'd spin it since we're talking about that tonight.
Cool.
Well, that's all I have for this week.
Okay. I got to remember I'm the host here tonight. I've messed up like twice already. Okay. You forget after you go two turns without it.
I know.
All right, so back over to Deathrow. So do a quick bio first. The band doesn't have that long of a career, so it's going to be quick. They were formed roughly in the mid 80s from Dusseldorf, Germany. Four albums released between 86 and 92. There was always confusion with the first album because it had
Yeah.
a different name in Europe and North America. It was
Mhm.
called Riders of Doom in Europe and Satan's Gift in North America, but it really is the same album. Often you'll see it listed twice in the discography. And apparently that was done by the label without telling the band, so it was a bit of a surprise to them. I mean, basically, from a style perspective, Death Row was very much like traditional German thrash. Not the first wave. I kind of put them in the second wave,
Yeah.
and so that's a good place for them. But so for me, like this album, Death Row, Deception Ignored, that's what we'll be talking about today. Just, that thing came out and it just totally shocked the fans. It was a sudden change to very like complex and challenging thrash. I personally think it's one of the biggest metal changes of all time for a fan base. For me, I think it ranks right up there with Metallica and the Black Album. So I think it's pretty big in terms of lineup. On Deception Ignored, it was the guitar player. He had just joined for this brilliant album. His name was Uwe Osterliner. I might be doing injustice to some of these
That's
names. The
okay.
drummer was Marcus Hahn. Guitar player was Fen Fluge, and Milo is the vocal and bass player. So it's a pretty powerful sound on this album for just four players. You would assume there were five on here, but anyways, so the band ultimately split in 1994. So brief career. I mean, the we'll talk about it in the question some potential reasons, but the band wasn't getting along. The original band members were blaming Uwe for bringing in too much complexity. So there was like bad blood within the band. Ultimately, it just led to the end, I think, and we'll probably talk about a few other reasons along the way. So let's move over to the actual album. Well, no, let's start with the questions.
Questions, yes.
So we'll go there. Death Row questions. So first, I'm going to start with you, Ken. Then we'll go over to Jim. What did you think of the first two Death Row albums? So Satan's Gift or Riders of Doom, depending on where you come from, and then Raging Steel. Were you a fan of those?
Well,
Mm.
okay, so much like you from last week, Billy, with the Black Album, I like Deception Ignored. It's decent, but I prefer Raging Steel. I think that's a fantastic album. Yeah, it's not going to tread new ground, but for me, I absolutely love this album. To me, the first album was raw. They were starting out, but the second album is like it's the epitome of their thrash sounds for me. Like, yeah, the production gets a little bit clunky at times, but you get this flurry of precision, like the lightning fast riffs, a lot of breaking memory melodies, lots of intensity. I just love the focus on just the heaviness of it overall. And the song Dragon's Blood. Tell me that's not one
Mhm.
of the better thrash songs ever.
Awesome.
That song is fucking awesome. I totally dig that song. It's
Yeah,
one of my favorites.
that is. You know what? I had
Um,
that written down. Not to interrupt,
yeah.
but I was like, I can't believe you brought that up. That's my favorite. Yeah,
Yeah, Dragon. I love Dragon's Blood.
yeah,
It's such a great song.
hilarious.
I think the trouble here now. This is where I understand this is your favorite. The next album is your favorite, Billy, but I think this album really was overshadowed by Deception Ignored. I really feel like I think this is a great album. I mean, you can compare it to like it has the same kind of energy and aggressiveness of early Creator in my mind. Well, hell, they even enlisted Philip Lavre, the Creator cover artist, to do their cover, which I absolutely love. It's one of my guilty pleasures for a cover. But I love this album. I think it's fantastic for me. But
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's a big drastic change. So the comparisons to Metallica is pretty good. I think you're down with that. But I love this album.
What about the first?
Oh, love it.
Yeah, the first album I like it too, but I find it a little bit more raw than the second album. I think they kind of found their style a bit more in the second album.
Yeah.
The trouble with this band is I don't think they ever. I mean, this could really dovetail into the other question you have, but I don't think they really found their niche. Like they went from kind of thrash to technical. And I don't think they ever really found the right footing, like to sort of, I guess, to compete with, say, Creator, Sodom, or Destruction, because all those bands just plowed right through. But I don't think this band was able to do that, which is kind of sad, because I think they are a really good band, to be honest.
Yep.
They're a really good band.
All right, cool. So, Jim, you were jumping at the bit to get in there. Well, I was going to jump in, but you go ahead.
Oh, man. Okay, so I love all these albums. Love them all. And I know there's going to be another question coming, so I won't go past Deception Ignored. But that first album, you listen to Satan's Gift on that. That sounds like Metallica Kill 'Em All meets Show No Mercy Slayer. I mean, it is a fantastic album. I freaking love it. And I mean, Raging Steel. Oh man, I can't believe that out of all the songs on that album that Ken brought up Dragon's Blood. That is you know what? And I haven't listened to that in probably, unfortunately, maybe over 2 years. And as soon as I put it on, it just started to click again. Like, oh man, this is freaking amazing. So I've got some holes in my collection I've got to fill here. But I mean, coming out of the fact that this band, I think I agree. I mean, I don't know what your feelings are, Billy, but I kind of agree with Ken, where I think for thrash fans, technical thrash fans, and metal fans all alike, I think it might have been a little bit confusing where the direction went. They didn't kind of stay on a certain kind of thing that they were trying to do. For me, I love them all, and I like them all equally. The album we're going to be discussing is a masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. But I like the album, and I don't want to give it away, but I'm going to give it away. I like the album after it. I think it's great. I think it's better than the Black Album. Sorry, Ken, but I think it's more thrashy, and it's just an awesome album. But that first album, I like raw first albums. That's why Kill 'Em All is my favorite album of all time. I like the original pressing of it on, I still have my Bonsai Records cassette where it sounds really kind of crappy, but I love that. It's the same thing. I mean, maybe I won't talk about the last album, but I find that like those old Misfits, I love the Death. I'm going into different genres now, but the Death albums, those live albums, I love the crappy production. That's what you need for those old albums, and you don't need to change it. If you do decide to change it, remaster it, or remix it, always keep. I don't understand why bands don't just put the original in and the remix one for new fans. I mean, they would get credit for technically two sales there, raise the price a little bit, but give that fan the original one. I think Celtic Frost did it on the greatest hits that I picked up, had or maybe it was Morbid Tales, where they had the original EP and then the one with the extended that was redone. And that's the way to do it. I think that's really cool. But anyways, I'm off on a tangent. I love them all.
Jim, but do you have the Raging Steel 2018 remaster?
I've heard it, but no, I don't have it. But
that's the one. Yeah, I had that one. It's really good. That's a really good remaster.
Wicked.
Yeah. Double CD. It's a double CD.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a double vinyl too. Yeah.
Nice.
Double vinyl. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you guys, right? And neither does the metal public, right? Like Deception Ignore was largely a flop. The Raging Steel was like hands down the second album was their biggest seller by far. So yeah, no doubt about that. Like the band sort of crumbled with, although like it's one of those scenarios where, you know, like if Metallica does it and goes more mainstream, they lost me as a thrash fan, but they gain way more like general fans, right? Like in this case, you know, there's you know, the tech thrash is more niche, right? So you're gonna pick up some new fans with Deception Ignored, but you're gonna lose probably way more than you would with the Raging Steel fans. But
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of Raging Steel. I love it. I think it's a great earlier thrash album, and I never thought it was as good as maybe the Creator or the Sodom at the time, but I thought it was definitely up there for sure. And the only thing that stopped me on the first, I knew Jim was going to say he loves the first because it's always me and Ken coming one or two after in terms of a discography. But I like it, but it's just too rough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's how I
yeah,
feel.
yeah, I'm with you, Ken. So yeah, we all agree. Not really any difference there. Uh,
Mhm.
Okay, so cool. So speaking of tech thrash, so in terms of the style, I mean, I guess first question is, do you like the style? And so it sounds like you guys like the album, so it might be very easy, yes. But what do you like most about the style, and what do you like least about the style? So Jim, we'll go to you first.
I think it's hard. It's kind of hard because I got to go by album, by band to some degree. But I what I like about technical thrash is I love the technical musicianship that comes along with it. It's not basic. I mean, I love thrash. I love death metal, but I like a little bit of technical work up with it, and I like the changes and the musicianship that goes along with it. And I like this kind of the sound nuances where they're going into it. Like, I guess for me, the only thing that I would say would be a negative if it goes too progressive. But then again, I really like Voivod, which would be some consider them maybe a bit of a tech thrash band, but I consider them much more of a progressive thrash band. And but I don't like. They're really good at it, if I can explain this right. But some bands that kind of go off on that, maybe that little bit of a left side, I find they fall off a little bit. That's the only thing that I don't like about it. But no, I really like it. I think it's got a really interesting sound. I love the fact that it's a little bit more thought provoking in the sound. It's not just a simple chug. It's not just a simple thrash album or song makeup, and I think that's what I like about it. But I definitely think that for me, you know, to get into, I was getting into, when I first got into thrash metal, I mean, we were all around for the kind of the incarnation of thrash metal. So it started off fairly basic, and then obviously this kind of offshoot from it. And I think it would have been a natural progression, especially heading towards the 90s where things were changing in a more kind of technical slash maybe industrial slash proggy kind of way, if that kind of makes sense.
Yep, no, makes sense. Ken, over to you.
Yeah, I'll echo most of Jim's sentiments. I would agree with what he's saying. Technical thrash, or just the technical side of it, I like the fact that you get like a lot of it, like a lot of these bands have this like lofty notion of making music, and it's like very prolific sounding, grand in style, and the delivery of it. So that's all great. I mean, for the most part, you know, you can't go wrong with it. I mean, unless you want to get too self-indulgent, and then it gets a little bit long in the tooth. And there are a few bands that do that.
Mhm.
But generally, this technical thrash style gave us like Victims of Deception, which
Yeah.
I think is a brilliant album in general. It's one of my favorite technical thrash albums. Even when Destruction did Release from Agony, same thing. They started leaning towards more technical side of things, and it worked. And then, of course, you can't dispute Metallica's Justice, which is like a classic, incredible album for technical brilliance. So yeah, I see what Jim's saying. So I totally feel the same way. Like yeah, it is a good style overall.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm kind of on the same lines. Like for me, this is my favorite genre of thrash.
Mhm.
So just love it, and I generally agree with you, Ken. Like things like Victims of Deception and
Yeah.
Justice are sort of very technical oriented, but like I tend to even think of technical thrash like one whole leap and a jump further, right? Like
Mhm.
things like a Toxic and a
Mhm.
Yeah.
Tower, and where it just took it to a whole
Yep.
other level. And so the one sort of trend there when it comes to something that, if I had a preference or what I might like the least, it's not as noticeable on Deception Ignored, but you'll probably notice a lot of technical thrash. The singers go really high range on the
Hmm.
vocal.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's always an acquired taste. Like I never minded it. I always
Mm.
enjoyed it. But some of them it took me like many listens to be able to absorb that. And you can't really sit there and listen to it for 5 hours with somebody, doing the air horn siren vocals. But again, that's easy to absorb in a single listen, and the music makes it all worth it. But it's the challenge of the music. Like, you can listen to a basic song and you listen to it 10 times and you're kind of done with it, right? Here, with tech thrash, you're still absorbing the music 10
Mhm.
times. So it's something that you can easily go back and revisit and never get bored. So that's what I like about it.
You know what I think, guys? I think this band kind of reminds me of a thrash version of something like Dream Theater, where,
Mm.
and I don't know, that may not make sense, but like in the sense that I think they wanted to harness something, but they just couldn't get their lasso around it. But Dream Theater is to prog metal, kind of like a technical prog metal band, and this is definitely a technical, especially the two middle albums, a technical thrash album. So I find those sort of similarities in my head when I was listening to it and checking it out.
Okay. Yeah, no, for sure. And I guess on that note, while you mentioned Dream Theater, it's slightly out of the world of thrash, but that's a hot topic on all the news lately. So
Yeah.
they've announced their 40th anniversary tour
Yeah,
with Mike joining them back in the band. So that'll be
Yeah.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Yep. For
Yeah,
sure.
I'll have to check that out.
yeah.
Okay, so let's go to the next question. So this is interesting. So we talked about it's a drastical musical shift. Like I mentioned, the sales plummeted. This really hurt the band, this album. I think it was just, too much of a shock. So the question is a blunt one. Do you think it killed the band's career? Jim, over to you since you're
No,
shaking your head.
I think the times were rough on these bands, and I think this. Okay, for me, this album is a massive crossover album. I get the feeling of a lot like you listen to Hidden Truth on this album, and you've got a really strong crossover sound, and many of the tracks have that. I think what hurt them was like what Ken said earlier. They just couldn't get that footing. Like they didn't have two or three albums the same, not necessarily the same, but of the same sort of makeup. And fans were kind of maybe left wondering, okay, what's next? What's next? And I think in '92, you had the Black Album, going so mainstream in that, and everything just kind of changing a little bit. Megadeth was even going off into a different direction, on their next album, and I think it left metal fans were a little bit more confused, I think, at the timing, and I think the timing was just bad. I think it's a great album. I got to be honest with you, the album we're talking about, I think it has I figured. I thought in my mind, this would be his favorite one because it's got such an Anthraxy sound to it to some
Yeah.
degree. I was like, oh yeah, no, Ken's gonna be loving this,
No,
and
I like it. I hear what you're saying.
yeah,
I do agree, especially the vocals kind of at times get into the Joey Belladonna.
absolutely.
There's some comparisons for sure.
But
Um,
I think maybe this band, maybe if they weren't necessarily from, like, maybe if this was a Southern Californian band, maybe it would have been a little bit more of a different outcome for them, just because they have that sound. I think the first two albums sound more of a Teutonic metal kind of vibe to it, and then than maybe the back two, especially this one, Life Beyond. I think it went more crossovery and sounded. I got more of a East Coast thrash vibe to it.
Yeah, I would agree
than
with
anything
that.
else. I really like it.
Yeah.
I like it. I would have liked a 2004, or sorry, a 2000. Well, yeah, 2004, but a 94 release, and they could come out with a new album now. I think it would be amazing if they could pull something together. I don't know why. I mean, I obviously the sales weren't there, and this would have been in the the bonus time of selling physical merchandise, physical copies and stuff. But I like it. I think it was really good. I love that album. It's great.
All right. And actually, I think all your points still apply, Jim. For this, I was going with Deception Ignored. Did it kill them?
Oh, okay.
But yeah, but the next question was going to be Life Beyond. But either way, your answers are. I think your point's still very valid, right? Is the times, and so yeah, like yeah. So I don't know if that changes your answer, but I think all your points are still valid.
Sorry, I jumped ahead because I was chomping at the bit to talk about this fourth album.
And I love that you love it, because I don't know anybody who likes it, and even more, I don't know anyone who even knows about it. So yeah, so that's cool. I'm like happy to see that. Ken, what are your thoughts here?
Well, similar to Jim, like I think the trouble with this band is that they just didn't have the cachet that the big four had. That's the first thing you know. And Jim just mentioned it, and I think that he's right. The first two albums tend to really follow more into the German side, but when I was listening to Deception, my first thoughts are, what reminds me of Heathen. It starts to remind me of Metallica. There's the shift from kind of like German European thrash to more American the Bay Area thrash is so evident. You can hear a lot. I hear tons of Metallica, tons of as Jim mentioned, Anthrax. You can hear it in the sound. So obviously I think when they made that change, they were obviously aware of the Bay Area sound. They had to be. They just had to be, because I wouldn't. Because you get Rage is like, I don't know. It's like maybe Crater on steroids at times, I think. And then all of a sudden you get this album where it's like, whoa, it doesn't sound anything like Rage. Mind you, there are still elements of Rage that I hear in Deception. They still take some of it, but it's in small doses. But I just don't think they had the cachet so I don't think this Deception killed their careers. I tend to just think it's probably the 90s as well. Like, you're getting in the 90s, musical tastes are changing. Even thrash was changing in the 90s. So obviously they tried it and it didn't work out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I agree with you guys. There's definitely some American thrash in here, but I also look at it and take away some of those like stomping, thrashing parts that they're pulling from the US. They're also pulling from Coroner before them.
Oh yeah.
They're also pulling from Mekong Delta, from their own home country, right? Like Uwe was listening to Mekong Delta like during the making of this album, right? So they're pulling from everywhere, really. But it's interesting, right? Like, because I got to hear some of the bands, like the band being interviewed on this. So I personally do think this album led to their demise, because they couldn't stop arguing over it. So in a way it did, right? Like, so that all the band member blamed Uwe for saying he caused the band to fail, bringing too much complexity. But here's the thing, guys. They had written already. He only brought the end, like the long songs and the last two. They already wrote the first four. So then I ask you, are the first four not technical thrash? They are.
Yeah.
So something's not driving here, but the band imploded amongst themselves over this album. So that really is what led to all the bad blood and led to their demise. But I totally agree with you guys, right? Like, whether or not, like, it just these changes, and with thrash going out the window and at the peak of the thrash period, it just was a bad time, right? Like some of the big four in German had a rough ride, as we talked about in the 90s. So a much smaller band. It's not surprising that they had a tough time. So I don't know. I find that whole argument between the band on this album very interesting because what they blame one for, they were clearly doing themselves. So I don't know. I don't think we'll ever know the whole story there. But anyways, so yeah, so then just quickly we'll touch on Light Beyond. Jim, you already shared your thoughts, so maybe
Yeah.
I'll go to you on anything you'd add on that album.
You're going to Jim, sorry, or me?
Oh no, Ken, yeah. Jim
Oh,
already.
sorry. Yeah, okay, you stopped there for a sec. Yeah, no. Like this album, I like a lot too. It's funny because it just sums up the band's, I guess, what they were trying to achieve. They kind of go pull back from I guess, from the proggier side and go back to thrash. So it's weird how it's like, oh, so we're gonna go back to it. We're still gonna put, like, I guess, technical proggy elements, but we're gonna have more thrash. So it's weird. They never, you could tell all four albums, they just never really found their footing, and this album is proof of it. So I very much see why maybe it damaged it. I guess they just said, that's it, we're done. We all can't come to an agreement on what kind of style to play. But I think it's a good album. I agree, Jim. This album is really good. Light Beyond is a really good album. I don't have any problem with it at all. All their albums are great to some degree, but yeah, I think, yeah, maybe it's just they just couldn't all get into the same room together. That happens with band members when you
Yeah,
think
no,
about it.
yeah.
It happens all the time.
They also lost, like, looks like they left Noise Records, or Noise Records left,
Yes.
which, that's the big German metal records, that's the big label there. And I mean, and then they obviously there was some dissension in the ranks, like Billy was talking about, that just, I think they just, the whole catalog, which is awesome, reeks of kind of indecisiveness to some degree.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jim. That's a really good point.
I think really, I mean, I know there's been lots of reissues, but you know how Noise keeps redoing like a box set, like
Yeah.
here, like Voivod and Creator and who? Anyways, there's been a few of them, but they should do a Deathrow one. I think that would be pretty cool.
Oh, that'd be awesome. That would be awesome.
That would be a good one. Okay, yeah, like I'm largely agree with you guys. I love the album, and I'm just so excited you guys know it. It makes me happy. So, and yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I guess the band just figured we got to try something different. This Deception Ignore was too extreme, perhaps, for them and their fan base. So, but they had already probably lost the fan base by that point.
Yeah, probably, for sure.
And they would have, whatever they did, like everyone else, they would have struggled in the 90s. They would have had to find a new sound either way. So, hell, they may have saved themselves a lot of headaches by calling it a day. Okay, cool. So then let's finally go to the album. So again, I think I showed it. And maybe really quick before we jump into the tracks, I don't know, Ken, was there anything on the artwork you wanted to say? I don't know anything about it. Is there anything?
I don't like the artwork at all. It doesn't, I don't know. I don't like it. It just doesn't work for me.
Okay.
I was looking
I figured it was some kind of fancy modern art or something. I don't know.
No, I didn't find much on the art. I looked it up, but I don't like it at all. I don't think it even represents the band to me. And
no,
I guess
for
me,
so.
I was so into like what Philip Lawver, and I love what he did with Raging Steel. To me, I wanted that. I want that kind of artwork. But I don't know. I'm not sure who made that choice, but it's not great.
They should have. You know what they should have done? They should have put famous death row inmates, kind of, so they don't have to pay them, so they can blur them out, but we all know who they are. That would have been cool.
Yeah,
interesting.
Different there, Jim.
All right, cool. So we got, I guess, depending if you're following along at home, we either have 7 or 8 tracks. My OG vinyl has 7. It doesn't have
I got 7 as well.
Bureau Crazy at the end. But I think a few of the CD versions have it. That 4-minute track. So
Yeah.
we'll see if you guys have anything to say on that at the end when we get there. So first track, we'll start, Ken, with you. Events in Concealment. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I like this song a lot. Like you know, right from the get go, like you get this twisting chord at the start, and it erupts into like this whole galloping chug. There's a lot of riffing flourish right at the 239 mark that I really like. It's so great. I just love how it's textural, and then they kind of like woven these riffs, and it just catapults the sound all the way through. There's definitely a Metallica vibe on here. I sort of get kind of I can get it. I can feel there's a Metallica vibe on it. I The song itself is great. I even love the fact that they had these lyrics that are really lofty. So they moved away quickly from the whole kind of Dungeons and Dragons and kind of feel of Raging Steel, and you get this where it's like they're talking about the idea of frustration and disillusionment, and how there's a lack of how the lack of transparency impacts people. So I think it's kind of interesting. But as a song itself, yeah, this is a really good song. You can't deny the strength of the song.
Yep. Yeah. No, all good points. Jim?
Yeah, I mean, I could echo what Ken said. I mean, I like the fact that it's got that this has got a really techie thrash song, and I like that, and it kind of really wakes you up right from the start. I find it's got a metallic. I wrote down Metallica with Belladonna singing, and you know this singer's got a really good voice, and like you had said, Billy, about some tech, maybe even some proggy thrash, because they kind of go a little hand in hand where the singer goes really high. These guys have got clean vocals, which are really good without sound like they're stepping on their balls. So I really like the fact that it's very just, and some of the songs are even kind of even a lower register with the vocalization, and I like that because it really just it really shows off. I mean, this band is highly talented, and this first song just gets you kind of in the mood for what's going to happen. And there's I like the fact that the songs just like they go from some shorter to some really long, and I like that it really kind of takes you on a really cool journey. And I think that's where the technical aspect of it kind of comes through, and I like that. There's not a okay, we have to hit 3.5 minutes or we have to hit 9 minutes on every song. It's like okay, faster song, slower song, a longer song, a shorter song. It's what they're putting on the album, and I think that this song just starts it off in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of this one. So yeah, I think you guys kind of hit on. I mean, a lot of these songs are going to have similar comments as we go through them, right? There's obviously some differences, but like I mean, a few things that stand out for me. Like I mean, obviously it's the technical riffing, like it's amazing. Lots of cool like tempo changes and time changes that you wouldn't expect to hear. But what I like about the band is that they're very good at bringing it back to like some kind of driving like thrash rhythm, and that kind of it's a heavier rhythm too, right? Like when you think about bands like Watchtower or Toxic, and a bunch of the bands that'll probably show up in our top 10, they don't necessarily get as heavy or as fast as these guys do, and that just might be the roots, right? They're coming from like German thrash is where they started with. So I've always found that to be an interesting comparison. I agree with you guys. I really enjoy the vocals. If you read the reviews, the majority of them just like crap the vocals. They don't like the vocals, which I don't really get. Like on this song, I like that he stays, Jim, to your point, he's not way up there. Like in a couple of songs, he gets to his upper range.
Higher register.
But not necessarily on this, right? But so that's cool. We got to talk about the bass work and the drum work because that's following along, right? Many of these songs, there's amazing intricate bass lines going through here. The solos on this song, 340, 425, they're just brilliant solo work that are out of control. And yeah, like someone like the drummer Marcus, who was doing more basic thrash drumming. I mean, the guy practically turned himself into like an advanced drummer some of this stuff out there, right? So kudos to the entire band for pulling this off, right? Because if one of those band members were a step behind, this thing would have fell apart. So yeah, as you guys said, definitely some talented people here. So yeah, very cool. So then that brings us to track number 2, The Death Wish. Jim, why don't you start us?
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what you were saying. You've got that like slight bass intro that fades in with that low guitar, and then the guitar just keeps fading in to a wicked riff that just leads into a gallop. So I find this band and this album, they like to really experiment, but they start and then they experiment and then they always bring it kind of around like a 360 back to where they started.
Yeah.
And I really like that because they stay true to the thrash genre, but they definitely do a ton of experimentation with their vocalization and their instruments. And I love that. And I think that's this I would love for them to re-put these into some sort of box set, and I think there's definitely a need for this to be I know there's a 2018 remix or remaster or whatever, but these need to be all in one shot where you can I think people need to listen to them from album 1 right to the album 4 and check them out, because I think a lot of thrash fans would really get a lot out of these albums. And I mean, this song is wicked. This has a definite Anthrax vibe, and I think this is one of the guitars on this whole album are phenomenal, but this is a really good guitar track as well.
Yeah, no, all good point. And I think you really hit on it, right? Like I was going to say, there's like some of the soloing gets really chaotic and they're really like unusual, like solos and or riffs and timing, and one riff going into the other. But there's a method to the madness where they always bring it back to like a reoccurring, like like stomping, rhythm, right? Like that would come out of like U.S. thrash, as you guys said. So I think that's cool. The bass works kind of off the chart on here, and that's going to apply to a couple. But and again, this is a comment too. I think will apply, but like all these songs, I think you got to give them a chance, right? Like somebody coming in on one listen, it may sound like just crazy throwing all these riffs in here, but as we said, it does come back to an overall theme and song structure. So you got to give it time. And just, I like the way this thing ends, right? It gets into this heavy, more basic jugging riff, and then everybody's shouting "The Death Wish Remains" over and over. Like that's pretty cool. And yeah, like I guess if there was a single, I don't know if there was a single, but this would probably be a good one to pick for a single.
Yeah.
Ken, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to what both you were saying about the song, like Milo is great on this song to me. Like 1 minute, over 1 minute and 14 seconds in before he starts actually singing. So it's great, but he has that nice scream there or a higher register at 254, which I really liked. And I think this song, it's one of those kind of songs where, it's got chuggy moments. It's definitely got a lot of like frenetic riffing, very doomy at the start. But I like the fact that, the song itself, like what he's talking about, the idea of morality and the whole point of his lyrics, they're very dark because he's talking about, it's like he's standing on the edge of a cliff and he's debating about killing himself, or at least that's what I took out of the song. And it's great. And I think the music really, really much reflects that. So when you get to the end part, as you mentioned, Billy, with the chugging bit, it's great because it's almost like, well, I'm ready to jump off the cliff, and then it just gets really crazy there. It's so great. And then they're all shouting the death wish. So it's like it's a brilliant song for what they were trying to achieve here. But I like this song a lot too.
Yeah, cool. Jim?
Yeah, I've already spoke.
Oh shit, okay.
Yeah, you got me first.
Next song, dude.
All right, cool. We're going to track number 3, Trioctane. So Ken, why don't you take us here?
Yeah, this is an interesting instrumental. It's long, but I like it. It twists. There's lots of twists and turns. Like you get that kind of the piano playing at the
Yeah.
start. I think that's great. I love how it reminds me of The Omen, the movie The Omen. Like I get
Yes.
that kind of creepy. We're starting out slow. Then there's an organ that kicks in, which I really think adds to the song. Like the first couple of minutes is like, oh, this is a really adventurous song. And then it gets a little frantic at times, like and I love the fact that they really kind of gets frantic. They slow it down. Like 4 minutes in, you're slowing it down. Then it gets a chuggier bit on the back half, and it gets really menacing at times too. But I love it. And and that little jazzy section that they kind of
Yeah.
throw in there 7 minutes into the song, really just like, oh wow, they're throwing in everything. Like a kind of a classical feel to start, and then they're throwing a little bit of jazz and a little bit of like, it's like the chuggy parts. It's great for a song. I have nothing like negative to say about the song. It's adventurous all the way through.
Cool. Yeah, it makes me happy to see you excited about it because
Yeah,
this
it's a
is
great song.
actually my favorite metal instrumental,
Mhm.
and it's my favorite song on the album. Like I've actually sat down and listened to this thing like 5, 6 times
Mhm.
just this
Okay,
one
cool.
song. I love it that much. I think it's a total masterpiece. I mean, it's a bit like we've been talking about instrumentals and why doesn't bands with talent do like stretch out on the instrumental more
Yeah.
Yeah,
rather than play it safe. So here's an example where for 8 minutes they completely stretched out, right? Like we talked about Death Angel on the first
The
album.
that's
ultraviolet.
right.
They have a good
Yeah,
one, but it's thrashy, but certainly not as intricate and all over the place as this is. But yeah, I agree with you, Ken. Love the beautiful opening. The piano work is
yeah,
fantastic. Like it's 8 minutes of brilliant like instrumental music. So
yeah,
you called out some excellent parts, so I'm not gonna repeat all those. But it's just and it's that theme again, right? There's like technical, complex, overlaying structures going on here. The tempos are shifting, but again, somehow it all ties together at the end. So, that's really cool. It's for me, this song, you may have hit it, Ken. It kind of builds tension, like it sort of builds to that crescendo, like at about six to
yep,
7 minutes, and then it calms down towards the end and kind of goes out with that acoustic ending. And yeah, whether that be the jazz or flamenco or Italian kind of like slower music, it's all cool. But yeah, the drumming again off the chart, the guitar solos, it's just something I don't know why it just completely clicks with me as this massive
yep,
piece of music. So you can tell I'm excited about it. Uh,
absolutely.
Jim, how about you?
Yeah, no, this is it definitely. I consider this like a thrash metal orchestral piece. Like it's big sound. The drums on it are phenomenal. Like this is a really, really killer drum track. I love the start of it. And then again, they go around full circle with that classical guitar sort of outro, which is amazing. So they've gone
Mhm.
full circle and they've built it like you mentioned about the tension and sort of you get that feel in it. And I like the fact that it's long and it reminds me of much more technical version of the ultraviolence. So when you
Yeah,
brought that up, like we talked about Death Angel, and we all really like that instrumental. This just takes it to another level, I think, and really shows off their chops as musicians. And I really really like it. It maybe when they were doing it, maybe I wonder if their record execs thought maybe this was a little bit too out there for what they were trying to. I just think it's great. I think it fits perfectly on the album, and I'm so glad they made it that long.
Yeah, this was one of the tracks like this and Narcotic. The two long ones are what Uwe brought with him fully
Okay.
written when
okay,
he joined the band. So
makes sense.
um yeah, so pretty cool. Okay, so
And Narcotics, another
no, I
masterpiece.
know.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly, right. Um, but still not like totally out of place to the rest of
No.
the song. So that's where the
No,
argument that you made is too technical kind of falls apart in my
Yeah.
eyes. But anyways, the next track, track number 4, NLYH. Jim, why don't you keep going here?
Oh, this is an awesome song. So they leave track 3 and they head into this. So they make kind of a really tight thrashy song, which to me,
Yeah.
it doesn't have the voice of Chuck Billy, but sort of has a bit more of a Basic Testament vibe to it. But still, there's something I can't put my finger on. I love the song. This and the next 1, 2, 3, God, the next 4 songs are all my favorites. I mean, and the last song. So I have ones beside all of these. I love this song. I love the laughing, the start of it. It's got kind of a more basic thrash, but then has that tech element to it that really makes it kind of stand out. I really like it. I think it's a great song, and it's a nice, cool, fast song too. But yeah, this has more of a traditional thrash sound to me, but still has that sort of tech vibe to it that really spices it up.
Yeah, no, cool. Like that was good. That's what I was gonna say, right? They kind of coming off the previous song, they kind of give you some slight relief off the complexity and technicality, but it's still there.
Oh yeah.
But not to the same extreme. And this is one song where I guess you do get the singer doing a little bit higher vocals.
True.
Yeah.
Particularly at the end, he's got some
The scream.
higher register, vocal ranges.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good sort of, it's a 3 minute, barely over 3 minutes. So it's a good sort of come up for air. It still attacks you, but there's a couple classics coming up shortly. Okay, so Ken, anything you want to add?
Yeah. So the song stands for "Never Lose Your Humor." So that's what it stands for. And basically, the laugh. I mean, obviously, the song lyrically is about struggling about relationships, and that you need to sometimes laugh about situations in your life. So I think that's kind of interesting. But it's a short little song that has a lot of destruction. I get a lot of destruction vibes in it,
True.
and I like that. It's quick, it's short, and it gets to the point. And it's coming off the instrumental. This is a nice song to move into as you go back into the more thrashier side of the album. But it's perfect. It's perfectly placed for me at track 4.
Yep, good point. Man, this would be one band. This is a band I never got to see. I'm sure not many people in North America ever got to see this band.
If they played North America, though.
Yeah, exactly.
What's that?
If they ever even played
Oh,
North
that's my
America.
point. Yeah, I don't think they
Yeah.
ever would have played, right? So,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
did tour like in Europe with Voivod and some of Celtic Frost
And Coroner.
like on the Noise label, right? So they would have teamed up. That all makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
But yeah, I doubt. Maybe I'm wrong. I just doubt. I've never heard of them coming, but
No.
I would have liked to have seen them pull off some of those longer pieces on stage. Whether that would have been too difficult to do live or not, but I don't know. I guess we'll never know. So that brings us to track number 5, "Watching the World." I think this one's a really good one. Ken, why don't you start?
Yeah, I like this song a lot too. I like the fact that, like, okay, so like it's low. The guitars kind of come in slow, then they pick up speed, and then all of a sudden you get these like heavy vibes, and it reminds me. It's just at the start, at least, it kind of reminded me of Megadeth. So I'm like, oh, I hear kind of a bit of Megadeth going on
Awesome.
here. And then, like there's a chug, and then Milo's vocals like 50 seconds in they kick in, and it's great. And then you get this tempo change that just gets more aggressive
Yeah.
by 2 minutes into the song. And it's like, wow, holy crap. And then there's a lot of melodic parts or a lot of melodic riffing like halfway through it. And I also like, the one thing I will point out is I like Milo's vocals here quite a bit. He's very impassioned, especially in the last minute of the song, where when the chug picks up again, you get that kind of Metallica chug, and it rams that point home. It's a really good song, and I also like the fact that it's another one of these weird songs. I don't know why. I'm not saying it's related to Atheist, but it just comes to mind because I always thought a lot of lyrics on Atheist albums are always pondering about the future and the stars and doing all this kind of stuff. And this kind of has that. The lyrics have that, where he's basically pondering his future by looking up at the world. And I think it's kind of interesting. So I think it's a really good song as well.
Cool. And I don't think, like, you mean Atheist, Jim Schaefer's
Yeah,
Atheist,
that's
right?
what I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
like they
Yeah,
have a lot
no.
of songs where they were doing the same kind of pondering about their place in the universe and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
kind of got that vibe here a little bit with the lyrics, at least.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, for me, I kind of thought this song is maybe the most accessible song on the album, right? Like, it's probably the only one I could say. Well, not the only one, but you could really say it's got a real hooky, catchy, melodic chorus, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of stands out for me for sure. But yeah, I don't think I you hit all the key points for me, Ken. So nothing. But the only thing I'll add is again, there's some killer bass work going on
Mm-hmm.
during the guitar riffs. The bass are doing their own. They don't just follow the guitar. It's adding a layer to the music that's pretty important, I think. And maybe just lastly, like I actually hear yeah, there is some like sci-fi type riffing. I feel like I hear a little bit of like Voivod a little bit in here as well. Some of this, but this probably would have been before Voivod's
Yeah. Way
period.
before.
So yeah, it would probably be the other way around, maybe.
Hey, Billy, can I ask
Um,
you one quick question?
yeah.
So Milo's a good bassist and vocalist. Do you think he's one of the better bassist vocalist combinations in like metal? Because there's a few, right? But I think he's way up there.
I don't know how he could like and correct me if I'm wrong. I can. I don't know anyone who's playing bass. Well, obviously Geddy Lee would be somebody that comes to mind from Rush, but somebody who's doing such intricate bass work and singing at the same time, like Tom from Slayer doesn't count because
Yeah.
it's pretty straightforward bass. Not straightforward, but
What about
it's
Phil?
not. It's not this kind of stuff.
What about Phil from Sick or Right? Because
Not
not
even
as
close.
intricate, but I like the fact that he sings and plays bass.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I like that people sing and play bass. I just mean in terms of who does it.
Right,
Like I guess I'm just going to who could pull it off with the most
right.
complexity and sing. And so this guy, and I think of Geddy Lee of Rush, who's not thrash, but he did. I mean, the fact that he was triggering keyboards with his feet,
Yeah.
singing
Yep,
and
yep,
playing
yep.
like bass, it just that's the world record bass player for talent. Uh,
Guaranteed.
I'm off topic there. Um, okay, so Jim, I don't think I got you on this one, right?
No, it's all good. I mean, I agree with Ken. I think there's definitely a Mustaine kind of sound to some of the
Yeah,
vocals, some of the lines in there, not all of it. And I think it like to your point, Billy, this is probably the most accessible song. I think this would have been probably a single, and I could see it being like metalheads really gravitating towards this one. But it's got a wicked solo in it as well. And again, this is another heavy drum track. And to your point, this song and the next song with those bass, you can actually hear the
Yeah.
bass lines, like the picking going on. It's so cool. And I'm glad they, this was 1989. I'm glad they really focused in on that because, being, working in technical thrash, it's definitely important to have that. So yeah, no, I love this song. It's great. One of my favorites.
All right. Well, you're still up here, so we go to track number 6.
Yeah.
This one's a monster in terms of
hmm
length and quality, I think. So narcotic. What do you think, Jim?
Oh yeah, I mean that echoey guitar intro is phenomenal. I think, and this bass line. I mean, there's parts of it where it just the whole thing
Yeah.
shuts off, and you just get that, and it's just so cool. Great vocals. I mean, this is what a 9-minute song,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and at 4:17 around, it kind of slows down into a bit of a classical kind of guitar part, but then it explodes up again
Yeah.
and just kind of gets going. This song has everything to being a tacky and a tight thrash song. And I mean, it's probably one of the best ones on there. And I didn't realize that this one and track 3 were written by Uwe. He brought this to the band because I mean those are like 2 of the top songs on the whole album. So and maybe even 2 of the top songs in their catalog to some degree. And to have that sort of them not happy to some degree, if that's true or not, I mean, it just kind of blows my mind because that makes up a big portion of the album, you know?
Yeah, I guess they're almost 20 minutes, right?
Yeah, exactly. On a 40, what is this album? 47 minutes, I believe.
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, it's like half the album. And I think those are 2 big parts of it for sure. And I mean, I love the song. It's a number 1 for me.
All right, cool. Ken?
Yeah, this is a really good song too. And yeah, you can we all acknowledge the bass line at the start of it, and even how Milo's vocals don't kick in until like the 130
Mhm.
mark. But what I like about Milo here is that at times he's the way he sings is that he's just spitting out vocals in the second half of the song, almost as if he's trying to cut into the wall of sound, because it's just a barrage of riffing
Yeah.
that you get all the way through it, and Milo's just he's just trying to spit it out. Not unlike David White from Heathen, who at times I felt had that too, because he was trying to keep up with the rhythm and the frantic pacing of the song. So you get that here, and it's great. And I like the song too because it's all about the idea of it's drug addiction, but not told in the way that Mustaine would write it, but in the sense that
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
taking drugs to numb the pain and despair and misery, which I think is fascinating. It's deep and it's dark, but it really works on the song. And for 9 minutes, like it's just incredible how it just erupts from the start, slows down, picks up, and it just doesn't stop. It's such a great song. I was reading a couple comments online, and people were saying that this song really represented addiction to them or the idea of being addicted to something. And I thought, well, that's actually quite interesting if people were able to pick that out. But for 9 minutes, it's a masterpiece.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I think it's the probably the most epic track on
Yeah.
the album, like a complete journey.
Mhm.
Like I said, you're all over the place. And yeah, like I find Milo's vocals like they're very like it's yeah, they're very manic and the music was following along.
Mhm.
Like I read some comparisons to here he was like spitting out the lyrics like kind of sounding like Killian from like Violence or something,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's interesting. He really changed his approach here, and maybe it's given that the music was brought to the band. He's trying to keep up with the manic pace of the tone of the music. I'm not really sure, but I think it works. Like I like it.
Mhm.
And this song probably has the best guitar solo in it.
Yeah.
It's just this one. It just shreds like for about a minute. It's really good. We talked about the drums and bass. Like I don't want to keep repeating the same thing. It's just a brilliant track. Like I have here in bold, it's a musical orgasm. And so
Good point.
that's
Good
the way.
point.
That's the way I'm going to leave it. And I guess in fairness, like if I'm going to say if somebody doesn't like this style, I can understand maybe where they would say, well, 9 minutes, could you have cut it at 4.5? I mean, for me, no, but like, I don't know. Like, I guess I can understand why maybe critics don't like it because they don't like a 9 minute song, but I think it's
Mhm.
brilliant. So,
You know what though, Billy? Like if you're a metalhead that's into thrash and you
mhm.
picked up this album for the first time, and maybe track 3 is a little bit too tech for you, this definitely fills in.
Yeah,
Like
fair.
I think you have the best of both worlds on those 2 tracks, and
Yeah, no,
I
fair.
think it would. I think it I guess feeds the thrash fan, the tech thrash fan, and even the prog thrash fan to some degree. In those 3 cover so many thrash genres. I think you cover everything in them in those 2 tracks.
Yeah, no, good point. Yep, don't disagree at all. Okay, so then that brings us to the last track. Track number 7, Machinery. Ken, what do you think?
Yeah, I love this song a lot. This is a
Mhm.
great song. And I think that Milo really stands out for me on this song because of like I just love how it opens. There's a kind of like a jazzy kind of guitar opening,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
it's sort of a almost like it's almost industrial music sounding, and I think that's probably why my ears really perk up when I hear the beginning of the song. And then for me, all the tempo changes here, they dictate the song. It's pummeling. There's like a pummeling beat, and it goes right into like a minute 30, and then of course Milo kicks up the singing, and he's so great here on this song. And I love how aggressive he gets. I like his chorus when he sings that we are just wheels in a great machinery. It's so
Yeah.
great. It's such a great. And there's a lot of crazy time changes. Like it just works. The song itself is so fantastic.
Mhm.
I love the riffing here too. There's like frantic riffing throughout, and And then, of course, Milo really adds to it. His vocals with the higher registers are great. And again, I think his songwriting is fantastic because he's talking about the whole effects of modern industrialization and how it's like a critique on how modern society is trapped in this cycle of consumerism and mass production. So I think it's great. It's a really good song for the lyrics and the music. Really strong.
Cool. Yeah, no, well said. Can't argue any of those points at all. And I like how, like, sort of the middle of the song, they go back to that sort of jazzy, like, acoustic passage one more time. So that's going. You nailed it with Milo. Like he's a star on this track, and I like that he goes into the higher notes on here as well. And yeah, again, to your point, this is just all about nothing's normal timing here musically. It's all over the place, but again, they bring it back to a theme and a structure within the writing, that it's not just nonsense or a bunch of riffs clipped together. The song still makes sense in the end. So that's really the talent here, is to be able to throw so many like tempo shifts and changes all over the place, but still bring the song back to a structure that you can kind of hold on to. So yeah, no, well said. Jim, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, I echo what you guys said. I think it's like a whole string of mini riffs that create one riff that create like a massive solo. And I think that's what it's all about. But yeah, I love the vocals on this. And the whole song is great. I mean, what a way to end off the album. It's on a massive high. And I like again, I don't think, I mean, there's an 8th track on the CD version or the remastered version.
Yeah.
And I think they could have even gone farther than 8 tracks, 7 tracks, 8 tracks, 9 tracks, because but I mean, I guess the album was getting up around 50 minutes. But I mean, I love this track. It's one of my favorites.
Okay, cool. Yeah, do you guys know the bonus track or no?
Yep.
I don't know much about it though, so I don't know if I can add much
Okay,
to
no worries.
part of the conversation.
No worries. Anything you want to mention there on Bureaucracy, Jim?
Oh man, that bass and that heavy guitar. This is another killer bass track. I mean, it's got I find this, wouldn't take away from the album in any way. It's got kind of a sludgy. This is the first time you hear sort of. I almost thought maybe it was recorded years after, because it has a little bit of a sound to it that's more like a sludgy guitar, although fast sludgy guitar sound to it. And at the end there, when it's I hate, I like the song. I think it's pretty cool. And whether you ended at 7 or you ended at 8, you can't go wrong on this.
Yeah, no,
sorry, Billy, I just wanted to add, do you know if the song was recorded at the time when they recorded the album? Because I'm not familiar with this song.
I didn't pull out my CD version.
Okay.
And my vinyl doesn't have it. So
okay.
I usually play the vinyl, but given this is one of my favorite albums, I have like 3 or 4 different versions of it from different countries and different pressings. So I know the song. And yeah, like it still feels like it's part of the album. Like I would maybe think it would have been, because it doesn't feel out of place.
No.
It almost feels like maybe it was recorded and they decided to leave it off due to length, or maybe they thought track 7 Machinery was a better way to end. But it doesn't feel out of place. Like I enjoy the track. I hear what you're saying, Jim. Like there's some, like, maybe it's also just rougher, right? Like maybe it was more of a demo, like it didn't go to final production. Could be, but it's not bad. Like if you like the album, Ken, it's worth sort of giving it a stream and hearing.
I'll
and also too, just a quick point, the 47 minutes is with this song in it. So technically the album was a bit shorter. So,
Yeah. It's also like I guess it's one of those things. It's a lot to absorb in a sitting, right? There's a lot going on. So I've never liked progressive or tech thrash. If the album's going to be 70 minutes, it's just not that it follows that, but it's too much to absorb in a setting, right? It'll fry your brain. mean. So yeah, I think this is a good length for a thrash album. So all good there. So I guess that's a wrap on the album. Any last comment, guys, or anything you want to add about the band or the record we haven't mentioned?
Yeah. No, it's
Great
all
album.
good. They're all the, as Jim said earlier, all the albums are good,
Yeah.
no matter what style. If you just want more raw thrash or if you want the tech style, it's all good. They're a really competent band, and it's just a shame that they couldn't, I guess, take it any further than like the 4 albums.
Yeah.
That's my only comment, I would say.
I didn't do any research though, guys. If and by name, they're not the most well-known guys. Like, did any? I don't know if any of these guys ended up in bands or
I
even did
No,
short-term stints. No, they
no.
didn't, or you don't know.
I looked it up. They
Oh,
didn't.
nothing.
Yeah, no. This pretty
Hmm.
much was their main gig.
Okay,
From
like so
my,
much talent. Like it's amazing they just sort of stopped playing.
I don't know, I guess for some musicians that's just how it is. They were in the
Yeah,
moment. They just decided to move on. Maybe they had jobs or they had
yeah,
families. It's hard to say.
yeah. No, that makes sense. All right, so cool. Let's shift into the final section, our top tech thrash albums. So Jim, why don't you kick us off here?
Sure, absolutely. So I decided to just kind of go right into tech thrash. Some of the albums that I picked, I know most of the songs on them, but more along the lines that I was kind of going by band more than anything. But I did pick an album from each one.
Okay,
That sounds
and
good.
band is fine. It doesn't
Yeah,
have.
yeah, yeah. So, but for my Mekong Delta, I'm getting into them because Billy's got me getting into them. But I got another one in here that both you guys have got me into, but I didn't have them make my. They kind of hit my honorable mention with Dances of Death. But I mean, I've been getting into their discography, streaming for now. Just that, but I'm really enjoying them. They're awesome, but they would probably be ranked higher if I had known more about them. You know. From when we started this, but I got them kind of in. They're not really in any order, but I guess start at 10. Toxic. The album Think This is pretty good. I like that. It's a great band. Number 8, Vector Terminal Redo is really really good from 2016. The band that you guys got me into is Wolf Spider.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
good band.
that's wicked. Kingdom of
Yep.
Paranoia is a
Yep.
wicked album. That's but their catalog is really really good. Then I've got DBC, Dead Brain Cells. You could pick either albums, but I got Universe down from 1989. It's a great. I mean, you could debate whether that's even. I mean, there's a lot of debate what exactly tech thrash is. Going from there, I've got Watchtower. Billy brought them up earlier. They're probably going to Energetic Disassembly from 1985 is a really, really good album. Revocation with Chaos of Forms in 2011. That's a great album as well.
Yeah.
Sadist, Swallowed in Black, 1990, but you could pick a number of albums from them. Hellwitch, one of my favorite bands. This could border on maybe even like they're Floridian. They could fall under maybe even a bit of a death metal thing, but there's Physical Miss Crency, which I could be pronouncing wrong, from 1990, but they had an album out last year which was really good. I consider them more of a tech thrash, maybe even a tech death band. Number 3, you could pick any one of the Oblivion albums. I wasn't fully aware of Oblivion. I had heard of them, but then I picked up Nemesis. But and I'm planning to get all the redo albums that they've just re-released. They're phenomenal, and I've been streaming them like crazy since from when we started. And I think Billy brought them up on, I think maybe the second episode or whatever. And then I've got this album, but to be honest with you, I could have picked any one of these 4 albums. And then I've got Coroner. Coroner, Mental Vortex 91. I love that album.
That's a good album.
But you can pick really, again, you can pick practically anything from their catalog. And we definitely have to do a show on them at some point. But those are my picks for sure. And I'm sure that when I start to get more into Mekong Delta, they're awesome, Billy, and they're fantastic. I want to get some of the physical copies of their stuff too. I know some of it's a little harder to track down, but no, I've been streaming it like crazy. I probably listen to it daily, at least something from them daily. It's that, just like Oblivion, it's that, and Wolf Spider's wicked as well too. So it's neat because when we started this 27 weeks ago, some of these bands I wasn't even fully aware of. Like, I'd never heard of Wolf Spider, and then as soon as you guys bring up a band I haven't heard of, I make a note of it, and then I go in and I just start consuming it. So but I do like to get the physical copies of stuff just so I have it. I hate just streaming it, but anyways, so that's what I have there, guys. I didn't pick. Void Vibe could fall under that. Justice could. It's Destruction, definitely Cracked Brain could fall under there too. Yep. But I wanted to kind of really dig deep and go into it and just see what I could come up with. But yeah, Coroner would be my number one. I think probably that album for sure.
No, that'll be a future topic, I'm sure.
Yeah, guaranteed.
Yeah, and they got a new album coming out.
Yes,
that's right.
All right, cool. Ken, you want to share your list?
Yeah, sure. So I went a little bit different. I didn't go to the typical ones because I knew that you guys, especially you, Billy, might have a lot of these on your list. So here's what I came up with. Number 10, you might have heard this band, Billy, because they are from Quebec. Horror Fiction. I don't know if you've heard of them or not.
No.
They put out four albums. I think they broke up now. I think, if I'm not mistaken. But Instigator of Chaos 2002 is a really good album. I like their style. Maybe it sort of borders a little bit on death metal at times with the vocals, but I think it's a pretty solid band. Number 9, I know I've talked about Craig and Lum and Vince Levelov before, but Psychosis, their first band, their first album from Psychosis, Life Force, 1992. I love that album. It's great. And the band is still around, but now they've sort of morphed that into their predecessor, which was Prototype, which I love Prototype a lot. I love all those albums that they put out afterwards. Maybe not so much thrashy, but kind of techie prog. I love it. That's a really, really good album for the first one. And then there's another band called Vorbid. I don't know if you know these guys. They're from Norway. They've got 2 albums out. The first album is called Mind. It's really thrashy. The second album is where they get more in the tech side of things. So it's the album is called A Swan by the Edge of Mandala. Came out in 2022. Check that album out. There is an 11-minute song that it's called Self. It's such a masterpiece. Lots of jazzy guitars. There's a French horn in there. It works. It's really, really good. And I love their album covers. They have some really, really good album covers. Then next I have Meshuggah. Now I know Meshuggah is technically thrash, but their first album is. So Contradictions Collapse in 91 is classic. I love it. It's got all these weird
good album.
Yeah, it's a great album. Odd time signatures. All these got great riffs. I love this band. I know they're not technically thrash now. They went off into this kind of polymath weird territory with the time signatures and all the riffing and stuff. But the album should be pointed out. It's a classic. And then I've got Believer, Sanity Obscure, their second album. I like these guys too. They're kind of death thrash, but they have a really technical approach to the way that they write their songs. And Sanity Obscure is a really, really good album. I love that album. And then I wanted to put a modern kind of tech thrash album, so I went with Vector. And I love these guys too. They've got 3 albums. All 3 are good. I mean, I picked Black Future from 2009, but I love it. These guys are fantastic. They have 3 albums out. All are great. My only beef is that their logo is kind of like, oh my God, that's my only beef. Like, I like their stuff, but it's like, okay, come on, guys, like you could come up with a bit more of an original logo. And
Yeah.
then the last, yeah, it's must my only beef, but the last four, and the number four, I have Hexenhaus. These bands that I totally love. They're from Sweden. They had four albums. They broke up, unfortunately. But check out their second album, Edge of Eternity from 1990. What a great album. So they have a lot of complex guitars. It's part of their trademark. You should check those guys out. They're really good. A couple of my friends, musician friends, love this band. Totally are into this band. Number three, I have Toxic, so I went with Think This as well. I love this album. It's
Great album.
Yeah, it's like technical speed. There's a lot of thrash intensity. I love it. I mean, I like World Circus as well, but I always went with Think This. I think it's a brilliant album. And number two, of course, I'm going to put Deception Ignored because I mean, technically, it deserves to be on this list because we've talked about it, but it's a classic. And then number one, I went with Heathen's Victim of Deception.
Yeah.
It's my favorite. I just it's one of those albums that I've always loved. I know Billy talks about Deception a lot, but I will always echo his point by saying Heathen's Victims is my favorite. Like it's just I love it. The songs are great. There's nothing that I know we talked about it on our previous podcast, but yeah, I love that album. So that's my 10.
Great.
Cool. Yeah, good list. Okay. It was funny. Like I purposely picked albums I can show because some of these won't be popular. And then I go to sit down to log in at like 5 minutes before, and I'm like, shit, I forgot to pull the damn record. So I'm having a crazy, unusual day today. So I'm a little bit off today. But anyways, so here's my list. I think I have 12 actually, to be honest. And I wouldn't say they're necessarily in order, but the top two or three are definitely in order. So I have Wolf Spider here, but I have a different one. I have Kingdom of Paranoia from 1990 was always my favorite, but both are really good. The one that you and Jim mentioned. I have a band I showed maybe once before, a German tech thrash band called Siege is Even. The album's called Life Cycle from 1988. That's a great band. Then I showed a CD of this. I might even still, no, I don't have it still sitting here. I was listening to it the other day, but it's a Australian tech thrash band called Taramis. The album's called Stretch of the Imagination from 1991. And this would be if I talked of them earlier, if the Canadian band Rush played a technical thrash, it would sound like this. Particularly Getty's vocals would be covered here as well. Then I go to DBC Universe from 1989, and yeah, Jim, I don't think there's any argument that this is tech thrash. This is tech thrash to the extreme. The first ones, it would be a stretch maybe to call it. It was probably more of a crossover thrash. But yeah, Universe. And then I had to pick a Coroner album. It's interesting that you guys mentioned Mental Vortex because that's my favorite album. But I for this list, I went with Punishment for Decadence because I thought that was more of a tech thrash definition. But yeah, where I find Mental Vortex is a bit more progressive. But anyways, it's playing with words. Then I go to a band I mentioned a few times, a very underrated, sadly not known well, the U.S. band Realm, REALM. The album's Endless War from 1988. I mean, both their albums are really good. Then a band I love, and only two albums. I don't think I've ever mentioned them here. The band's called Target. This is their album Master Project Genesis from 1989. It's an amazing like technical thrash, but not off the charts technical. Like the song structures are still really good. They're actually from Belgium, so that's probably why you don't get a lot of of tech thrash coming out of Belgium, but check out the band Target. They have 2 albums. The others, I think, Mission something, the other album title, but both are very good. Then I have Toxic. I think you guys already mentioned it. I was purposely keeping Tech Death off of here because I love Tech Death. Atheist is one of my favorite bands, but I guess this falls in that category. But I just had to go with my boy from Voivod, Chewy, and his original band Martyr. I chose Feeding the Abyss.
The Wicked.
All 3 albums fit the category, but you could argue they might be blending into death metal a bit. Then my top 3, Mekong Delta, Dances of Death. So you could have picked 3 or 4 Mekong Delta albums easily, and I'm not going to argue any of those. And then my final 2, and you talk to me from one week to the next, and I'll flip them. Watchtower, Control, and Resistance for me is the best Watchtower album, and of course what we just talked about, Deathrow, Exception Ignored. So lots of great albums from the 3 of us. Not a whole lot, some crossover on our list, but not too much.
Yeah,
great list.
Yeah, it's a good list. Everyone's got. I kind of figured we would have similar albums. That's why I was trying to look for albums that were kind of not known, or But we always come back to albums that we talk about.
Because we love them.
You've mentioned Target before. You've mentioned it before. It's funny.
Cool. All right. So, any final comments, gentlemen, before we start to wrap this up?
No, this is a great album. We picked a really good album to talk about. You can't.
You know what? And we could do another show on the other 3. But I like it. I think people really need to seek this stuff out, especially new fans. I think it's massively underrated, and I think this whole genre of tech thrash is massively underrated. And I think people maybe get scared of the moniker a little bit. They kind of think maybe it's something different, and I don't like change. But man, people really need to dig into this stuff and go check it out.
Yep.
No, well, we should do one on Raging Steel eventually. I think we should. It's worth covering because I think it's got some good songs, and even Wolf Spider. I think we should do. We should actually cover them now that Jim's listening to the albums. Billy, we should do one on Wolf Spider.
Oh yeah.
I've always had them. I've been a fan since.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. I've always been a fan for quite a long time.
So and as Jim said, like Coroner has to be coming.
And Coroner,
Then with Wolf Spider, I can give you guys the new fan sort of from an old guy's point of view, but a new fan hearing them for the first time on this show and then going out and seeking them out. That would be a great.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, I don't know, Ken, if you know off the top of your head that the band is done, but
no, they're still around. Actually, they've released a couple modern albums in the last like 5, 6, 7 years.
Okay,
they're still around.
Same style though, right?
It's similar, but it's okay. I don't know if I like the modern stuff as much as I like the classic stuff. Give it a listen to. They have a couple later albums. It's all right, but I way prefer the older stuff.
Okay, cool. All right, so that wraps this episode of Thrashcast. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We have another interesting topic. We're not quite as I wouldn't say extreme as I wouldn't call this album extreme, but it's different. We're going back to the American Big Four. Jim's going to be the host next week. Megadeth Countdown to Extinction. What's that from 92, Jim, or 91?
92. Yeah.
Okay. And I guess that sort of spins off our Metallica Black Album conversation because some would argue that this sort of followed that path as well.
Absolutely. This is going to be cool. I mean, coming off of this album that we just discussed, in between those, what you can't go wrong. These are awesome.
Yeah.
Early 90s is an amazing era for thrash.
Yeah.
No, for sure. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. I'll thank my co-hosts as well. Great job, guys, as always. And we'll wish everyone a good evening.
Good night.
See you later.
See you later.